Well, good morning, everybody. Great to see you today. Good morning. Like the interaction, it's awesome. It's awesome. So we're wrapping up our series today on the land between, and we're going to get into a new series coming up. But we've been looking at the land between, and that is the point where we face change or transitions in our lives, where we look at our lives now and we realize it's not the same as it was in the past. And as we look to the future, we're pretty unsure about where we're heading. It's a place where we feel like we've entered this kind of desert sometimes, a kind of desert where the scorching heat of circumstances are difficult for us to bear, where maybe we're dealing with family problems or financial struggles or health issues. Sometimes this land between begins with a late night phone call that's just totally unexpected and just shakes us up, or a problem with a parent that we don't anticipate, and a health concern, a doctor's report. Whatever it is, inevitably we face this land between, this scorching desert moment, and it throws our lives into a tailspin. And we've been looking at the nation of Israel as a whole, as a people who themselves literally and figuratively entered a desert, that they entered a period of time where they struggled in desert heat and their circumstances were harsh, they were difficult. We looked at how they didn't fare so well in the desert and the lessons we can learn from that. But today I want to pivot a little bit. I want to shift direction a little and look at someone we may miss in the midst of this narrative that we've been unpacking. Someone that we could miss in the midst of this story, and that's Moses himself, the leader of the Israelite people. Because Moses is going through his own desert experience, severe desert heat. He's struggling in so many different ways, and we're going to look at that today. We're going to look at how his life and faith are being tested severely, but not just his faith, it's his leadership as well. Comprehensively, this man is enduring big-time stress. And it begins with looking at how Moses had to deal with the discontent and anger of the people he was leading and the difficulties that caused. Just a few verses give us a pretty good picture. Exodus 15 and verse 22, it says, when they came to Marah, they could not drink its water because it was bitter. That is why the place is called Marah. So the people, they grumbled against Moses and saying, what are we to drink? The people are in the desert after being delivered from the oppression of Egypt. For 400 plus years, they were slaves, and they've been delivered from Egypt. They're in the wilderness. They're in the desert. They're there just 3 days, and already they're grumbling about Moses because they don't have water. And when things were going well in their lives, they were quick to praise. When things were going great and the sun was out and all the circumstances were kind of heading in the right direction, praise quickly came out of their mouths. They were worshiping God. They worshiped him and honored him. But when things went bad, they quickly saw the dark side of things. When the stress levels went up, their inclination was to look for the worst, find the worst, and express the worst. And Moses increasingly became the target of that grumbling. Over time, things didn't get better. In Exodus 16, it says, the whole Israelite community set out from Elim and came to the desert of Sin, which is between Elim and Sinai. On the 15th day of the second month after they had come out of Egypt, in the desert, the whole community grumbled against Moses and Aaron. So now Moses is once again the target of their anger and frustration. And Aaron, his brother, is as well. It's a very difficult time in his life. And isn't it amazing how negativity spreads? It's really such a contagious pathogen. Have you ever seen that maybe in a workplace where one person who lacks discipline over the words they say or lacks the discipline to really think productively and positively about what they're experiencing in the workplace, the one person who lacks the discipline opens the door for a lot of other people to lack discipline as well. And it just spreads like wildfire. You can see it in workplaces. You can see it in homes and marriages. You can see it in churches, organizations. And it was happening in the Israelite camp as well. Like wildfire, increasingly they were rejecting God. They were angry about the desert. They were upset with Moses. And soon Moses felt that this could turn in a horrible, horrible way. Exodus 17, it says, "So they quarreled with Moses and said, 'Give us water to drink.' And Moses replied, 'Why do you quarrel with me? Why do you put the Lord to the test?' But the people were thirsty for water there, and they grumbled against Moses. They said, 'Why did you bring us out of Egypt to make us and our children and livestock die of thirst?' Then Moses cried out to the Lord, 'What am I to do with these people? They're almost ready to stone me.'" You know, sometimes we look at these stories and we read about people in the Bible and we don't think like they're real human beings. Like we think like they just kind of exist as characters in history. But they were real people like you and me. They had emotional things. They were emotional beings. They had every need we have. They were just like us. They just lived a long time ago. And sometimes we take the humanity out of them. We drain them of real life. And the truth is, Moses was struggling big time with his life right now. He was struggling first with his own desert experience. He was in the desert like everybody else. He struggled with water, like I'm thirsty, and he struggled with food. All the struggles everyone else had, well, Moses had them too. And there's no doubt he asked questions like we ask when we face hard circumstances. Questions like, why, God, is this happening? Why don't you come through a little bit earlier? We looked at that last week. Like, can't you, I know you're powerful. I know you could do this. Can't you come through just like a day earlier, just like a little bit earlier? And he doesn't. And Moses struggled with his own faith, with his own issues. But now later on top of that, the struggles of leading a difficult people who began to target him, began to even threaten him. And he's like, wow, this is getting out of control. These people were not only angry at him, but they were making that anger known to the point that, man, these people are going to kill me. Like, they're going to stone me. My life is over. So just for a moment, I think we realize that Moses, he's stressed out, to say the least. He's overwhelmed. He's overworked. He's despairing in all of this. His stress levels are astronomical. If they had blood pressure cuffs back then, 4,000 years ago, and they tested his blood pressure, boy, it would be through the roof. This guy was enduring so much. The desert heat was taking its toll, and he was dealing with serious discouragement in the desert. And the truth is, that can happen to us too. That we can deal with serious discouragement in our own desert situations. Discouragement where we say, I don't see an exit from this heat. I don't see a way out. And we can feel depressed and despondent and despairing as well. We can reach a moment where we don't really know how life is going to get better. We feel stuck and there's no hope for the future. It's something that happens in all our lives at one time or another. And we can even kick into what could be called the why me syndrome. Have you ever kicked into the why me syndrome? I think in an honest moment we might say we have. Like, why me? Like, why me? Why is this happening to me? Why, God, aren't you coming through? Why the scorching circumstances? Why do I have to deal with this? Not once, but again. I got to deal with this again. Why are other people, they just have such a better life? Why is their life so much easier than my life? And I know that because I'm on Facebook. And I've been on Facebook and I see that everybody has a perfect life. It's a tremendous life. And I don't have that life. And I'm like, why me, God? And we feel like, wow, it's just passing us by. Moses felt that way too. Why me? Why all this trouble? Why is it so hard to follow you? Hey, I'm only trying to do the right thing here. I'm trying to do the right thing and things are falling apart. And remember, God, I didn't want to do this in the first place. Do you remember that? Now you go back to Moses when God first called him and he said, I'm going to call you, Moses, to lead the people. And he's like, well, that ain't happening. Because I'm not doing it. And Moses is like, I'm not going to lead the people. Are you kidding? I'm not capable enough. I'm not competent enough. I have my limits. I'm not a good speaker. God, go find somebody else. And you compelled me, and I listened, and I'm leading the people. And now look what happens. It's all falling apart. Why me, God? And yet, God is working in the midst of all these questions. He's working in the midst of this desert heat. He's working in the midst of these trials. And Moses kind of gets to this point in Numbers 11, where I think he kind of gives this verse to God, and he cries out to God, and he says, God, I don't want to do this anymore. I'm tired of this. The weight I'm bearing is too much. And in Numbers 11, I like the verse. He says to God, he goes, God, did I conceive all these people? Like, seriously, did I give birth to them? It's like, these aren't my kids. And I call it this verse in Numbers 11, these are not my kids verse. These are not my kids. I got my own kids. I got my own issues. Now you want me to take care of this kind of obstinate people. These aren't my kids. They're your kids. Take them back. Take them back. Because I'm done with it. Because the weight of the world was on the shoulders of this man. But you know, in the midst of desert heat and weights that seem so hard to bear, God has a plan. And that plan would radically alter Moses' life. It would change the downward trajectory of his life in a dramatic way that would not just help him in his moment, but would help him for the rest of his life. Now, one of the things that I like to do is I like to get to the gym pretty regularly. And I go to the gym because, well, in my family, there are some good genes and there are some not so good genes. So I'm trying to do everything I can so the good genes prevail. So that's what I do. And I like the way it makes me feel. You know, I don't know, it releases endorphins into your bloodstream or whatever it is, I don't know. But afterwards, I have energy, I feel good. But I also like the way it makes me look. And I have a picture here. I know, oh my goodness, that's what my wife says. She loves it. She loves it. She loves that I'm rippling. I'm rippling. That's what she says, you're so rippling. So, and I know what you're thinking. I know what you're thinking. That I hide it very well, and you know, thank you very much. It's pretty invisible. Yep, yeah, actually, it's completely invisible. But anyway, but when we go to the gym, what is the purpose of the gym? Well, we lift weights so that our bodies can engage a heavy load. Our bodies can engage a heavy load so that we can build strength. That's what we do at the gym. We engage a heavy load so that we can build up strength. But sometimes in our lives, when we look ahead and we're honest with our circumstances, there is a load before us that feels too heavy to lift. There are loads in our lives that we look at and we say, this feels too heavy to lift. And you know why it feels too heavy to lift? Because it is too heavy to lift. It's beyond your capacity to lift this. To curl this kind of weight is like impossible. It's a very, very difficult thing to do. Few people, if any, could ever do it. But yet, that doesn't stop us. We're not deterred. We may have a weight here. And so what do? We try. We try. We get at this thing and we try. And, you know, and we're like, wow, this is rough. This is hard. This is heavy. This is a big burden. But, you know, we keep trying. And if that doesn't work, we exert more energy. And what does that mean? It means that we grunt, because grunting helps. Ah! Ah! If you're new this morning, I apologize. It's not something that happens on a regular basis. I know it's extremely odd. And I don't know if you've ever been to a gym where they grunt. Have you been? I have. The first gym I went to, they grunted. And these like hulking guys, of which I was not, they would lift these weights. They throw them. They throw them around and grunt and all. The gym I'm at now has like this lunk alarm thing. And you know, if you grunt, they kick you out. And I've only been kicked out twice. So I feel pretty good about that. So we grunt. and then we have some success. Then we don't have success. But we're not done, because I'm going to deal with this. So we plot a strategy. So I'm going to get under this. It's not working. So we're gonna solve this for sure. I'm gonna get. And at some point we just have to admit that this burden is too big. I need some help. I need help. Can anybody help me? I need help with this. It's beyond my capacity. I can't curl this. I can't deal with this. So, come on in here. But then, all of a sudden, with others, I can curl it. Oh. Wow. Man, I'm feeling confident here. Man. All right. Thank you so much. Wow. That was so much better. But then, sometimes our lives are not about one big burden. It's not one big heavy load. That happens in our lives. A lot of times it's different. It's a multiplicity of burdens, a multiplicity of problems that come into our lives. And they kind of come into our lives and they like surround us. They're everywhere. And we take the same approach. I got all these things. I can handle a couple of them, and sometimes we can. We can handle a couple of them. We're like, I got this. But then we realize there's a lot of them. So I'm going to keep doing the same thing I always do when I face a problem. I'm going to try. So I'm going to try. I'm going to lift all these dumbbells myself. Okay. All right, that one's not going to. Let me try right here. And we get going, and man, I just missed my toe. Thank you. But we're going to try, and we're going to grunt. I'm going to strain at this. And if I can't figure it out, I'm still not quitting, because there's got to be a way to do it. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to do what any smart person would do. I'm going to line these up and roll them up my arm, okay? So then I can carry them like this. What are my chances? How about 0? Because the truth is, it's not always one big burden. It's a multiplicity of things that surround me. I can handle a couple, but they're overwhelming. And God has designed it so I need help. I need others to step in and help carry some of these weights. And what happens when I let other people into all the different struggles that I face? I can carry this weight because I'm not doing it alone. And that makes all the difference in the world. So thank you let's give them a hand for helping out. I think we see here that ultimately you're not designed to bear your burdens alone. You're wired for community. See, this is one of the biggest things that we can lose sight of in our culture that says, you be a rock, you be an island, you be self-sufficient, you take care of your own things, you're smart, you're capable. That is all true. But there's going to be a point in time where our ingenuity, our resourcefulness will reach its limits. And God is going to allow that to happen because He wants us to bring others into our lives. He's designed us to be part of something larger. He's wired us for community. And here's the thing. Moses didn't get it. He didn't understand it. He had to learn this lesson the hard way because he was blind to his isolation. He was not able to see the toll that his unwillingness to bring other people into his life, the toll that was taking on him relationally, spiritually, emotionally, and in every way. He was blind to it, and it can happen to any one of us. Exodus 18 describes this lesson Moses needed to learn. It says this: the next day, Moses took a seat to serve as judge for the people. And they stood around him from morning till evening. When his father-in-law saw all that Moses was doing for the people, he said, "What is this you're doing for the people? Why do you alone sit as judge, while all these people stand around you from morning till evening?" Moses answered him, "Well, because people come to me and seek God's will. Whenever they have a dispute, it's brought to me, and I decide between the parties and inform them about God's decrees and his laws." Moses, his father-in-law, replied, "What you are doing is not good. You and these people who come to you will only wear yourselves out. The work is too heavy for you. You cannot handle it alone." Many times when we read these verses, we look at them through the leadership lens. We look at them in terms of leadership, and that is absolutely true, that if you lead in an organization, if you're a pastor, staff person, if you're leading a ministry, there's limits to what you can do alone, and that God's plan is for you to include others in the mix. So, that's what we have to do. Otherwise, we burn out. We have to share the leadership load, no doubt about that. But I think there's more than a leadership lesson here. There's a life lesson here, because there's a larger context going on, and that context involves all the other things we've talked about. The stresses that are piling up on this man day after day after day. The toll, no doubt, this is taking on him in every way, in every area of his life. It's a comprehensive set of weights and burdens that are overwhelming to his life. And as is often the case, he doesn't see it. He thinks everything's okay. He thinks he's actually managing this weight okay, and all these dumbbells and the things surrounding him. He's like, I'm doing fine. And there are people around him looking and saying, "You're not doing fine at all. Like, you're heading for the cliff. The trajectory of your life is not upward, it's downward. You're paying a really, really severe price." When we think about Moses doing that, how often is that us? We need the resources of others, but so often we say, "I'll do it myself. I'm okay. I'll figure it out. I'll get it done." We isolate ourselves. We withdraw. We pay a price. Others don't. Others see it. We don't, but we keep trying. And I think what we see here is that God's word to you today is the same word Jethro gave to Moses. That if this is how you're processing the burdens in your life all alone, what you're doing is not good. Because we're designed for community. We're to allow others into our lives to bear some of that weight. And ultimately, there was a solution. We read about that in Exodus 18. Jethro's father-in-law is the one who comes up with this. I don't know what kind of relationship you might have. If you have a father-in-law, would you take advice from your father-in-law? Well, Moses was smart because he did. "Listen now to me, and I will give you some advice, and may God be with you. You must be the people's representative before God and bring these disputes to him. Teach them the decrees and laws, and show them the way to live and the duties they're to perform. But select capable men from all the people, men who fear God, trustworthy men who hate dishonest gain, and appoint them as officials over thousands and hundreds and fifties and tens. Have them serve as judges for the people at all times, but have them bring the difficult cases to you. The simple cases they can decide themselves. That will make your load lighter, because they will share it with you. If you do this and God so commands, you'll be able to stand the strain, and all these people will go home satisfied. Now, we don't know why Moses wasn't open to sharing his burdens or letting other people into his life. We don't know why. Maybe he just, made excuses like any one of us could. Like, I don't want to bother people. Like, I don't want to bother people. Maybe a big thing, I might let it out that I don't know. But I got these other things that are adding up. And it's like, I don't want to bother people. They got their own things. They got their own issues. It's just, I'm not going to do it. Or, and it can be like, I don't want to appear like I can't control stuff. Because I can control stuff. I mean, some stuff I can control. It could be our pride. We're just, I don't want people to think that I'm needy, like, oh man, so-and-so, you're so needy and all these kinds of things. And we're like, I just don't want to appear that way. And Moses might have had those excuses too, and we can have them as well. But I think ultimately we see here that when we fail to bring others into our lives, the burden will become unbearable. We will pay a price. And we'll miss out on the opportunity to see God break through because we are at our best when we spread the load and let others into our world and into our lives. I learned this lesson in a very profound way, a powerful way this past summer. And a few weeks ago, I talked about my son David and the things he went through. And I just want to get you a little up to speed on things with him. As you know, and if you haven't been here, I'll tell you, our son was born with multiple problems. He's in the autism spectrum. He's had multiple surgeries, open heart surgery, lots of different surgeries. He's dealt with some behavioral things that we've tried to work him through over time. And he was doing pretty well, except this summer, at the beginning of the summer, and I did talk to you about that. We hit a horrible time. David was undergoing a medication change, and that medication change went horribly wrong. And our doctor was away. We couldn't get it fixed. We wound up in the ER for 10 hours, which was just terrible, horrible time. But that was the easy part because we wound up back in the ER for 30 more hours. We spent 40 total hours in the ER. It was like doing a work week, just trying to get through a big-time challenge in his own life. And we were there in the midst of a very dark time. And I'm going to be honest with you. It was getting worse and worse, and I'm going to be honest with you that I almost didn't tell anyone about anything. Almost didn't tell anyone about anything. I'll just tell you flat out. And I think it's probably because I had some of the same excuses Moses did, and maybe you do too, where it's like, Denise and I handle a lot of stuff. We'll just handle this. We're just going to handle this. We'll figure this out. We'll work through it. We're praying. We're praying. We're asking God to help us. So we're doing what we need to do. And maybe I just don't want to bother other people. And I don't know if I really want to bring others into it. And after a period of time, I sensed the Holy Spirit saying to me as we sat in the hallway, still no room, doctors walking all around, busy, but no one paying attention to us. I felt the Lord say to me very clearly, share this. And I was like, okay, share this. And so I did. And I put it up on our Facebook site. If you're on the LifePoint Facebook site, it's private. It just goes to people in our church. And if you're not on it, you should be. It's a great place to connect. But I put it up there, and within seconds, there were posts praying, thinking of you. Let us know if we can help you. Minutes, there were dozens. And after a period of time, there had to be 100. After several hours, there were 100 or so different people, hundreds of people, you praying for us as we were in a very dark time. Others of you emailed and texted and sent words of encouragement. The church got meals together for us because we weren't eating or thinking about eating, but we needed to eat, and you thought of that, and that made a big difference. There were so many words and gestures of encouragement in the coming days. It was a really, really big deal, and it really reminded me of the importance of connection, that encouragement would not have happened had we not shared it. And yet there's part of us in our culture that says, just do it yourself. And that independence that gets kind of cultivated in our hearts and lives, it lies to us and tells us we're self-sufficient, and no one is. But there's one more thing I need to share with you that's crazy. To kind of wrap this whole thing, a really crazy sequence of events. Because we're there for 40 hours, and there was a 33-minute period of time where 3 incredible things happened in a whole long span of time that I believe was absolutely a God thing. The first thing was this, that we reached the point where we were at our lowest moment. It was in this period of time, about 33 minutes, where we reached our absolute lowest moment. David was not doing well. He was not getting any attention. Things were getting out of control. We were in the hallway. Everybody saw everything going on. I looked across at my wife, and she's feeling the strain in a way I'd never seen before. And so I'm thinking, man, she's really struggling, and I'm really struggling. What are you doing? And so what do you do as a good husband? I told her, you need to leave. That's what I told her. And then I told her something you should never say to your husband or wife, but I said it anyway. I said, listen, you need to go take a hike. And she's like, oh, I don't recommend that, but you need to go take a hike. And she goes, well, where? You need to leave. And I said, I don't know. Go to Starbucks, okay? Go get us a couple Starbucks. And she goes, well, where is it? I said, well, go out down this hallway and turn left. And then you'll turn right. You'll go all the way down to the end of the hallway. You'll go up 3 flights. You'll go over 2 hallways, down 3 flights. You'll open the door, and there'll be a garden out there, and just keep going. Keep going. She goes, that's not Starbucks. I said, I know it's not. I don't know where it is, but you should just get a break. And she said, no. And we sat there. Right after that, my son Austin texted us and said, I'm worried about you. I'm worried about you. And I remember that moment saying, I gotta get back to him. Because I'm getting kind of worried about me too, and especially Denise. And it was in that moment that I needed to text him back, and I did. And I said to him everything I absolutely, positively believe is true. I told him everything I know is true and believe is true. I said that this is a brutally hard situation. You don't need to worry about us. God is in control. Keep praying. Keep praying, and this will work out. And after I sent that message, I looked at it and I said, I believe everything I said, but I don't feel anything I said at all. I don't feel like God is in control at all, because it's out of control as far as I can see. I don't feel God's presence because he seems pretty far away. I don't feel any sense of encouragement or hope that this is going to get better because no one is helping us. We're pretty isolated. I don't feel like the outcome is going to be good because I can't see that happening. But in the midst of that, the second thing I realized is that this was a severe, serious faith test. God wanted me to express my faith to my son, even though I felt none of it because I was numb. And it was in that moment, after I sent that email, I'm like, God, this is hard. I believe it's true. I don't feel it. That the third thing happened. I was getting a lot of texts and emails, but one stood out, and that was from Melissa Bear, and she knows I'm talking about her and mentioning her today because it was 33 minutes after I sent a text to my son that I did not feel, but I believed was true, but didn't feel. It was 33 minutes later that I got an email from Melissa, and I wrote down the time. It was 9:32 at night. And she said something I needed to hear. She mentioned to me a place called Paxton Ministries. It's a Brethren in Christ home in Harrisburg that has fantastic programs that deal with those who have developmental issues or behavioral issues. And she said this, the reason I think you should think about this for David is this, because finding the right help and support is so important. Those were her words. Finding the right help and support is so important. And that began a process for us where things began to change over time. It didn't happen right away because things were still bad. But David was released from the hospital and he adjusted to his new medication. So we got David back. Which was great. The same affable, friendly kid. I told myself I wouldn't get emotional, so I just can't control it. But we got him back. The same happy, emotional, affable kid. The kid that loves the Lord. If he's talking to you, he's going to talk to you about the Lord. The guy's an evangelist. He can't stop talking about his faith. He has so much joy. All that came back. We then took a trip to Paxton Ministries and we were checking it out and we realized it was a fantastic place, that they had resources way beyond the things that Denise and I could provide for him. That we were in a situation where I was doing everything. I had all this weight around me and I didn't even know it. I'm just juggling it, handling it. And I realized that it was more than I could bear. And in fact, they had resources to take care of it. David loved this place. Absolutely loved this place. And in fact, it came to the point where he decided to take a big step in his life. For 2 years, he's been saying to us, Dad, I want to be more independent. Dad, I don't want to live at home forever. Dad, it's boring at home. All these type of things. He's saying it over and over again. He's like, I want to be on my own. And after researching it and thinking about it and David checking it out, he's now a resident at Paxton Ministries in Harrisburg. And he's got his wish. In fact, it's even reached the point where recently he called me and he goes, Dad, I don't want you to be insulted or anything, but it's way better here. Dad, don't take this the wrong way. It's way better here than at home. I'm just so glad I'm here. And I'm like, you know what? God works in incredible ways, and I didn't see this coming. The timing isn't what I had in mind, but it's exactly what God had in mind. And today, David is doing better than he has in the last 2 years. And what have I learned from all this? I think first that God provides all that we need to deal with our burdens and discouragement through other people. God provides everything we need to deal with our burdens and our discouragement. But it's not just because we pray and say, God, you're just going to do this thing and make it happen. And God can make a problem go away in a second. He can heal the human body. He can take away the stress. He can remove the desert and install the palm trees and make it easy. But so often God doesn't do that. He sends us help in the desert. Help that we should be responsive to. Help that I'm learning to be responsive to. Paul talks about this very same thing in Galatians 6:2. Help to carry one another's burdens. And in this way, you fulfill and obey the law of Christ. We're not designed to do it all. We got to help each other. And so I want to give 2 ways, just as we wrap up this morning, to encourage you to do 2 things. The first is this: join a life group. Join a life group. Get connected in a relationship with other people. Join a group. Don't put it off. Don't say you're too busy or I just can't do it or all these carve out time for community, because here's the truth. There are sometimes you're carrying this burden you're not meant to bear, and God's bringing other people in, but you're not letting them take that load because they don't know anything about you. You're doing your thing and you're isolated, and it can happen to any one of us. It's happened to me. But you also get to be the one who doesn't just get the burden lifted. Sometimes you're the burden lifter. There's so much joy in helping other people. The greatest joy in this life isn't having more stuff and, doing all these kind of things. Those get empty real quick. The greatest joy is when we help other people, get involved in their lives, make a difference, bring some shade in the desert, some refreshment in that heat. That's the greatest joy. So join a life group and also get involved in a ministry. A ministry here at LifePoint is way more than a task. Yes, we have hospitality. We'll have a hospitality meeting next week after church, second service, if you ever wanted to do that. And, but that and teaching kids and helping with food pantry and do all the things that are emerging. New ministries are coming out of our church all the time. These are not mere tasks. It's community. It's how you get connected. Because while you're doing that, you're doing it with other people. The fun fair, a great way to start meeting people and getting to know other people. And I would really encourage you, don't wait for somebody else to come along and connect you. Sometimes we think, boy, I hope the church will connect me to something. And we can create opportunities, but I really encourage you, take the initiative. You take the initiative to pursue community through life groups, through ministry teams, through all the things we're doing, and that will pay off for you because God has designed us not to go it alone. And God sends us help. He sends you help in your desert. That help comes through other people. Let's pray.